Now, while our previous speaker focused about how, when we look at the global supply chains, the stability around it, how Suez Canal is also coming up with multiple initiatives despite the challenges we're facing. What we're now going to do is take those dynamic thoughts and move ahead, because now it's also time to get the CEO panel discussion started. We've been hearing from the leaders themselves, and let's continue the trend, let's continue that dynamism and gear up for the CEO panel discussion. And this particular discussion will dive into the modern logistics renaissance that's fueled by tech advancements, sustainability, and once again, the key word that we're talking about, resilience. I'll be inviting our speakers on stage. And first up, what I'm going to do is, as we say, to get the right answers, one needs to ask the right questions. And the only way that can happen is by inviting on stage our session moderator. May I please invite Somick Goswami, partner and leader transformation, PwC India. So let me please invite you on stage so that you and I can welcome your panelists. So with that, let me go ahead and invite our amazing speakers. First up, we have with us Sanjiv Navangul, Managing Director and CEO, Bharat Serums and Vaccines. If I could please invite Sanjiv sir to please come on stage. May I further, once again, re-invite back on stage Mr. Rampraveen, Swaminathan, Managing Director and CEO, Mahindra Logistics. May I also please invite Abhishek Chakraborty, CEO, DTDC Express. And may I once again please invite Mr. Kanwar Singh, CFO, Oracle, India.
Thanks. I think, we had very interesting an hour or so, and we heard from Mr. Amarendu Prakash, his views on how the evolution of this whole sector of supply chain is happening. Mr. Swaminathan, with his experience, shared with us how he is seeing the impact being created by supply chain in the overall business and economic growth of the country. If you ask me, this is one profession which was probably looked at for a long, long time as a back-end operation of companies. I think from back-end operation of companies to really front office transformation, which really touches every day, the customer impact, customer centricity, customer loyalty, retention, is one of the most important journey that supply chain would have traversed. And eminent panelists who handle this day in, day out, really has put this whole topic of resilience, of supply chain reforms, and innovation around it to the forefront. With that, we have a very, very, very diverse panel. Somebody who comes from a technology company who provides solution. Abhishek represents DTDC, a brand name, I would say a made in India name, household name. If somebody who have grown up hearing what courier is, it probably was synonym to DTDC. Okay, so Swaminathan, handling a very large portfolio of Mahindra Logistics, which has done wonderful work. And of course, the work that during COVID time around vaccine that was done by some of the great work that has been done by the companies. So on that note, let me start coming to you and ask you, why do we talk to the resilience to be built in this whole supply chain?
So, good morning, everyone. In my industry, it is a little easier to talk about why resilience is important. Because if we falter, it affects human life. So we don't have any chance to falter. Many industries can afford a day's delay or half a day's delay or something happens. But in our case, delay means death sometimes. And it is that impactful that we have to be far more resilient about everything. And the last few years has told us that being ready for any eventuality, geopolitical risk, COVID of course taught us many lessons, but different kinds of risks that are emerging in transportation, the freight rates going up and down currently, the factories have to be continuously running. The drugs, medicines have to be available at the right place at the right time. All this has become very, very complicated. And missing anything causes a lot of harm. And let me give you an example. For example, one of the things that we make, which probably most people would not know, is probably the only big makers of anti-snake venoms. Now, snake bites happen in remote places. One of the requirements that we have is that to ensure that the anti-snake venom is available at every location. Yeah? Now, look at how we need to think about supply chain. First of all, we don't have to think alone of having the medicine available or the anti-snake venom available. Also look at the cold chain that we need to maintain. But imagine we need to also take into account that there should be a judgment decision very quickly on whether it is the snake bite is poisonous or non-poisonous. So then we have to get into the diagnostic detail of trying to see that supply chain can it provide that. The next thing that we need to know that people don't even realize they have had a snake bite. They just feel sometimes a small bite. They might think it's an insect bite. And in the next 2 hours, the person is lying on the deathbed. So how do we get NGOs to really work around and create a system by creating awareness? That's part of a supply chain for us. Now, these are elements of supply chain that we are learning as we go along, which actually can impact human life differently. And therefore, for us, as we build resilience thinking, we have to start thinking about what else can go wrong and affect human life, rather than just think about manufacturing a product and reaching the product somewhere. That becomes just a part of it. The other part of the story is that, the technology enablement that has happened all over the place today is amazing. I ship all over the world, sometimes very difficult medicines, but at the click of a button in my office, a supply chain guy is monitoring whether the data logger is okay and whether the temperature has been maintained throughout the 38 hours or 45 hours journey. And if it is not maintained, then the product gets compromised. And what to do with it then? The other factor that we have in our supply chain is injectables mostly that we make, is that if a product comes back to us on return for any reason, we just destroy it. We don't want to recheck, retest and resend because the risk is high. So how to learn about all this is very, very different. Disposal of medical waste is another supply chain headache that we have. So in terms of the resilience that you talk about, we need to go through so many other things that happen that sometimes we wonder that wasn't our life very easy some years back when we would just manufacture a drug and distribute it. But no longer I think we can think about it this way. The other problem that we see, and I think all of us see, is just in time has gone out of the window. Yeah, it's about just in case all the time now. And supplies being distributed, alternate supply chains are difficult in our case because the regulatory authorities would approve maybe 1 or 2 suppliers. How can we just think about alternate suppliers? The quality is at risk, the consistency is at risk. So how do we plan long term that can you imagine we are working with a supplier now who will deliver us the first raw material after 5 years? So it takes 5 years for us to develop a supplier and sometimes deliver things to us. So I think it's a very complicated industry in a way, but an industry where mistakes can be heavy to pay for.
I'll come back to you because you have left a very important, question in my mind. But before that, we'll come to Swaminathan. You have been also interacting with the industry bodies a lot. The cost of doing business. We are every day talking how do we do more with less, and logistic cost in our country has always been a bit higher than the normal, world standard. Where do you think, government need to move to enable, this ecosystem in this room to really make the whole cost of doing business much more better and palatable, to really, pass on that benefit to the end customer, because the end customer also wants the best of the stuff at the least of the cost. So any reflection on that?
I think logistics cost in India is an interesting subject, which I am biased because I'm in the industry. But I think in general, it's not that the purchase price of logistics in India is high. In fact, you could argue that The price which customers actually pay for logistics services in India is quite low, given the profitability of the industry as a whole. The challenge, I think, is the cost below the iceberg. On the top of the iceberg, the below the iceberg cost, which is cost of inefficiency, it's the inventory you carry, it's the returns you manage, right? It's all those inefficiencies in the system between trade-offs across your supply chain, which actually adds your hidden cost to you. And that's where I think the 12 to 14% number, which is often referred to, I think, across the world, across various industry bodies, comes in. I think where we stand today, I think the National Logistics Policy and the Gati Shakti program, I think for a large part actually recognize many of the challenges. I think the cognizance of the issues, I think, is very strong. I think infrastructure and digitization is actually making a lot of progress. And I think as that happens, there is going to be more access to information. The reliability of services is going to improve. I think Abhishek can talk about it a little bit more as well. It's something she and I probably deal with every day. Just getting your vehicles on time, getting warehouses opening properly. So as infrastructure quality improves, the reliability and the dependability of services will improve. And I think those things are already underway. So I think in that sense, there are the ability to create dependable services through better infrastructure, the ability to integrate services through better availability of information. I think those are actually well underway. I think the challenge is, can the government help do it faster, right? Can it just make it a lot faster, and can it reduce the bureaucracy in it a lot faster? Because they still have, while I think there's still a lot of intent for left hand and right hand to talk well, I think there is still a lot of operating challenges given the federal structure of our country to actually translate intent into action. So I think that's something which I think does require a lot of progress. I think the other thing which probably the government can invest a little bit more is in the speed of formalization of the sector. Logistics across the world is a fairly fragmented industry. And notwithstanding what people put, I think you would see that the top, if you go to the US, for example, the top 10% of the companies probably have 28% of market share. They don't have 88% of market share. So by nature, I think it's a fairly fragmented, kind of hyper-local business to some extent. But the question is, are the terms of competition formal or not? Right? Because for companies to invest more, they need to actually earn an attractive rate of return. And the government obviously cannot make us get a rate of return, but the government can actually ensure that the terms of competition get better by investing in more formalization initiatives to formalize the sector. I think those are two big headlines. I think otherwise, as I said, I feel a lot of policies actually take cognizance of many of the challenges we've had in the industry. I've been on the shipper side for most of my career, on the corporate side, switched over to logistics a few years ago, and I can tell you from having seen it from multiple angles, a lot of stuff which is being done today actually is in the right direction. Question is, can we just make it all move a lot faster and kind of drive better synchronization across different parts?
Thanks. Thanks, Abhishek. If I come back to you, and we keep talking about transformation of this business, transformation of this sector. If you put yourself in the shoe of running a large brand like DTDC and having seen DTDC 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, what made you think that the transformation is required? Was it an outside-in view where customers were pushing us to think different? The business was becoming very different. The complexities were, becoming very different to handle. What were the triggers that said that this business needs transformation?
Thank you, Somick, for that lovely question. Great to be here. With the permission of my colleagues on stage, I can tell you that transformation is clearly a very used and abused word. I think businesses, at least post-COVID, are in a constant state of transformation. Transformation is no longer something that you one fine day wake up and decide that I want to do transformation. And I think there's a strong reason for that, because today transformation is needed for survival, is needed for the continuity of your business. The risks, and I think the fantastic speakers since morning who've spoken have all shown that the agility that businesses now require has never before been seen. If I were to kind of demonstrate that with an example, I loved Sanjiv talking about it, and a nice story comes to my mind. In 2020, when the Covishield vaccine was being launched, we took on a small project and said, what can we as express players do to contribute to the nation in this time of need? And we didn't have a cold chain business at all. We didn't have a supply chain for it either. And yet, in the middle of COVID, when we had half of our management and leadership mostly operating from very remote places, we were able to create a solution to deliver a Covishield vaccine between hospitals using a normal, regular transportation supply chain. Now, that requires you to come up with different ways of looking at the problem than you've ever seen it. We have products today that we offer to our customers where we want to give them a 100% money-back guarantee that if we don't deliver the product as per the time or the date that we've indicated, we give you all the money back. Now, that means the way the supply chain needs to be seen, the tools, the technologies that need to get used, absolutely need to be in the cutting edge. Concepts such as blockchain, machine learning, AI, which probably were science fiction till a few years ago, are now mainstream. Last year, we launched what we call as DIVA, DTDC's Interactive Virtual Assistant, which is a Gen AI platform that sits on top of our customer interaction platform. As a result of it, we were able to drop the number of inbound calls that come into our call centers by more than 25%. And that means not just the savings that we make, which of course need to be translated back into efficiencies back for our consumers, but just the customer experience itself that you're able to deliver, the insights that you're able to generate. And I think at a more critical level, one of the reasons why transformation is needed is this industry always was known as a back-end industry because the availability of manpower at the low costs used to be a given. I think that is dramatically changing. Labor is not going to be as cheaply available. I think quality is certainly improved, but its costs are also going to go up, which means if you're not able to bring in those transformations, those digital interventions, ways to automate and get your people to produce more or more effectively and definitely with a better experience, I think survival itself is going to be quite difficult. India, in that context, if I say, has probably got a lot of catching up to do. And obviously, the good part for Indian companies is that the opportunities are so much that the transformation, I think, is going to go on for the next 2 decades at least. And I'm sure, as the vision of our governments, of our leaders, and indeed of industry colleagues is, India has a fantastic opportunity to be at the absolute cutting edge of transformation in the logistics and supply chain space. And I think from a survival need to do transformation, I think it'll be the excellence need for transformation is where I see the transition moving forward. Thank you.
Well said, and that kind of tease off to a tricky question, Kanwar, if I am allowed to ask you that, more you do technology advancement, more you are making yourself vulnerable to today's world to, cyber attacks. Risk of doing business is also going up every day. As a technology solution provider, what are you seeing and what are the thoughts around that so that, people like Sanjiv, Swami and Abhishek has a good night's sleep?
Thank you, Somick. Thank you for asking that question, first of all. I think cybersecurity risks obviously are paramount in everyone's mind as we do business. And I'm glad that a CEO panel, in all their questions that they were addressing, have addressed technology as a component, and if not the primary component of this whole thing. The fact remains that technology or no technology is no longer an option. Technology is the only option because all of us, we want to be more efficient, we want to be more productive, we want to be the least cost service provider, and we want to be the most efficient service provider. When we talk about cyber security risks, gone are those days when traditionally the CIO would say that I want to have my servers right here where I can see them in the lock and key. And the lock has to come from Aligarh and so on and so forth. That doesn't work anymore, right? What works today is the layers of security that can be built for the IT solution that you are using and how fast it can get updated. Now, there are chances that, I might have the best possible solution which I have developed myself. But there are also chances that if you are using a solution which is actually running on a secure cloud platform, then that itself mitigates the first level of cybersecurity risk. I'll say the first level. No one today guarantees that there is no cybersecurity risk per se. But think about it. Are we as individuals better equipped to provide security against cyber threats, or our individual organizations are better equipped, or do we go to solution providers who can provide this as a platform? Point number one. Point number two, where is the most vulnerable part of a cyber security or an IT risk? The most vulnerable part in an IT security risk or cyber security risk is when you have islands of technology which do not talk to each other. And we are short of time, otherwise the Fairfax case which happened in the Americas is a clear case of where they knew where my vulnerabilities are, but they didn't know which all components need to be updated. And before they could update it, the cyber attack had already happened, and then it landed them in severe trouble and the market valuation and so on and so forth. So cybersecurity is not just a business essential, it is also our obligation to our shareholders. It's our obligation to our customers. One cybersecurity or an IT disruption can cost much more in terms of goodwill and market valuation and continuity of the business, because there is always a competitor which could be a step ahead. So, if you think about it, systems which run on secure platforms and systems which talk to each other in a secure way. Most of the risk happens when data is moving from one island to another island, and that transit may not be secured. And hence, interconnected platforms, mostly on cloud, will always help mitigate.
Thanks, Kanwar. So, a question to both of you, and I would like to have your reflection on that. Sanjiv, you said that you're in a business where you need to be very, very responsive because you're touching human life. ESG is becoming a big, big conversation in this sector. But you cannot do it and make it happen. It's an ecosystem that you need to work with. You need to train people. First of all, it's the, conscious of doing things right at the last mile. Because more and more D2C business evolves. The next generation, the consumer of many of the products and services, are becoming extremely conscious about, what are they buying, what are they consuming. Two very different industries. I would like to have reflection from both of you that where does it start and where does it end?
You want to go first, Sanjiv? Okay, so I think we have a very simple view of this. There is obviously inside the fence, which is our own business, and kind of outside the fence, which is the way we work with our customers. We are a service provider, so ultimately we kind of empower other supply chains in a large way. So within our business, of course, we have a very clear commitment to it. Probably on 35-40% of our last mile delivery is already electrified. We hope to get it down to 100% over the next 3 years. We have 7 million square feet of warehousing, which are now all IGBC or LEED Platinum certified. We have circularity systems embedded in them. And we don't do this with an economic return objective. Our view is that this is just a way to do business. And we have established financial targets which accommodate and adjust for the investment. And we are confident about the longer term return of it. I think the harder thing actually is outside the fence. And outside the fence is both in terms of our supplier ecosystem. We work with 2,000 plus partners who are transporters and so on. And we also have customers. And ultimately, if a customer says, I don't want to do this, you can't force it, right? So I think, so a lot of our attention in the recent year has moved away from inside the fence. We're very confident that we'll be scope 1 and scope 2 carbon neutral by 2030, somewhere in 2030 and 2040, to actually working more on the ecosystem. And I think that's where the rubber really hits the road is, can you work with customers to help them understand first, right? What is their footprint? Today, I think 90% of our customers don't even understand what the footprint is. I mean, they all might have vision statements and mission statements as well, which says we'll become carbon neutral by so and so. But if you actually ask them what is their footprint today, they actually don't know what their footprint is. So the first step is you got to actually help them put a goalpost out there, right? And I think that's where I think the largest challenge is because right now it's a lot of, we have a lot of customers who call in and say, okay, do you provide electric services? And then they don't really know what impact it's going to do to their supply chain. They just kind of want to jump on the fad because somebody in Copenhagen or somebody in Memphis right, is telling them that somebody on the board has told them, why aren't you greening your supply chain? It has to be done. That has to be done. So they kind of want to put lipstick on the pig, if you may, or just play around with, jump on the bandwagon a little bit. But to make constructive and real change, I think we have to get our customers to understand how their supply chains are working, and I think that's where all of us in the industry have to work, right? The one thing I will say, at least my own view, and I might be some Mahindra Logistics view, is that we believe that as a logistics industry, we have to stop asking for premiums. I think that's where we said our goal is saying that if we are really committed to this, we have to kind of make it the way we do business. And how we make the economics of it work is really our operational challenge. Just like Sanjiv has to make pharmaceuticals at the right price, right? I mean, he's got to meet FDA approvals and compliance requirements.
It's a regulated industry.
It's an operating system parameter, and if he does it, then he's going to make it work, right? So at least our perspective on it is that it's a cost of doing business. It's not a cost of serving customer. It's a cost of doing business. And that's just a mind shift change, which at least I think we are trying to advocate strongly inside our company and probably the sector as well.
Fantastic. Sanjiv?
Somick, I think you set me thinking by saying where does it start and where does it end. And all of you, maybe in most industries, would say a repeat customer is a great customer. For me, a repeat patient is a failure. I don't want repeat customers. So I know. So when in our business, what we have to keep thinking is so much early that why I should not have a repeat customer at times. So I have to go back many, many years to research and find medicines by which can solve real problems. So my supply chain thinking has to start so much earlier. And I'll give you an example. I think one of the medicines that we have, we are probably the only ones in the world now, is Rh negative women. Many of you might have experienced it, that when they are giving birth to a child, they have to be given an immunoglobulin. And the immunoglobulin that is available world over is human plasma derived one, which is not really ethical because you sensitize male and then do it. So we have built a recombinant one, which is the first in the world and only biologic from India, which has WHO IN and name and all. But point is, when did we start looking at this to make it recombinant was 2014. And I launched it in 2022. And I had to think in those times that this will be a more stable product, more predictable, better to manufacture, completely controlled supply chain because there is just a cell line in my storage, which is what the raw material is required. I don't have to depend on any external world. Cut out everybody. Similarly, for fertility hormones that we make, China is the biggest source of human urine that we require as supply chain. I had to think now, about 5 years ago, and in 2028 I'll bring to the market is something which will mean that I will cut out China's dependency, because then I can make through cell lines recombinant versions from my own labs. Now, that supply chain thinking extends much before you see a product in the market. So it doesn't start where people think it starts for us. It starts much earlier. And we don't know the end because this is an endemic situation that we see one disease after the other, one problem after the other. So we just can't think of where does it end. But some of the endpoints make us very happy. Sometimes a patient being wheeled out of ICU to the ward when is getting better, or a couple having a child with fertility treatment, gives us so much happiness, and it makes us very, very happy and maybe feel satisfied that a job well done in the evening, is because that's the kind of endpoints we can measure. But the problem is that we might start there, we might solve that problem, new problem emerges. And it's not very different in other industries. In his industry, by the time they have developed something against some virus, there is something else coming up. And there is somebody in the corner of Russia trying to attack somebody's system. So it's all across industries. I cannot claim that our industry is so different that it only happens with us. But the continuity of thinking has to be such that you keep on improving every time that you look at things and say, how do I cut out the risks involved in supply chain or in the whole chain in such a way that I can deliver maximum to the customer, to the patient in such a way that they can get a better life.
Thanks. I'll borrow 5 minutes from the organizer because I don't want to leave, Kanwar and Abhishek without a question being asked, which is going to be a lot of learning for all of us in the room. Abhishek, we have been talking about these global mega trends, geopolitical issues, technology disruptions. We spoke about massive rapid urbanization that is happening in this country, climate change. Tomorrow morning, something else can get added to this mega trend. So as a CEO, what keeps you awake in terms of ensuring that the business is adaptive, agile, and efficient?
It's a very pertinent question, I guess, one of the toughest questions. And yes, I think most CEOs post-COVID have had more sleepless nights than they had before it. But then I think better solutions have also emerged in the same time period. I believe we as an organization and definitely as an industry, we are at our innovative best in this period. So it's fueled a totally different way of looking at business. And I'll give a very different answer to this, that the key to that question does not lie in systems, in processes, in technologies. It actually lies in culture. Agility is not about the latest and greatest stuff that you could get. It's also about how you build your people. How do you look at your customers, your consumers, your own priorities? Love the point that Ram presented, that it's a mindset aspect. And businesses need to now understand and appreciate that the next threat is never going to tell you that it's going to come. It's probably already building. Its early insights are already being seen. And as Kanwar said as well, probably data and intelligence is already pointing you in a direction that you should be thinking about. What I see has changed for CEOs and leaders is earlier we used to wait for a long period of time to look at very, very glaring data that used to hit us to say, this is not a tsunami that's coming. Let's wait a little bit more. Maybe this is a passing fad. I think our alertness to change has increased. Our teams have now become more resilient in terms of how they respond to change, how they talk to, and the conversations that are happening. I love the point Mr. Prakash mentioned in the morning. Truly, we live in an era not of competition, it's co-optation. You collaborate, you talk to your fellow industry partners, and we all seem to be building a greater consensus that if we work together, probably all of us will be in a better position than we would be if we did not. COVID did teach that to all of us. And therefore, it's these cultural tenets which then translate into business practices and processes, and indeed use of technology and other advanced systems, which then creates businesses that are extremely agile. I think that's the way forward for all businesses, whether supply chain businesses or otherwise.
Thanks, Abhishek. So, I'll come back to you, Kanwar, for the last question. You have been with a large solution provider and talking to various CXOs. How has the transition happened for somebody like you from being just a software provider to being a business partner to different business heads or the CXOs to make them much more agile, efficient, and adaptive?
Thank you, Somick. Gone are those days when software service providers or software providers could sell a license and then wait for the next upgrade and then go back and sell that upgrade. That used to be the norm in the IT industry maybe 20 years back. Today, I think CEOs and CXOs are expecting partners, are expecting solutions. And the solutions are very specific to the situation where they are in. In the same industry, there could be two different players at different points of their own journey in their business, in their evolution on technology, in their ambition, and in their funding, and so on and so forth. So what has happened is that over a period of time, this relationship from being a vendor and a customer has clearly changed into a partner. And the partnership is so deep now that we often see resources who were working on the technology provider side work with the customer tomorrow and vice versa, number one. Number two, it is also very relevant now that since people are at different points of their technology journey, customers can pick up something which is modular in approach. So I think one big change which has happened in the recent past is we have gone modular. Customers are going modular. Supply chain or finance or any other branch, even CX, customer CRM, you can get onto the technology journey in a modular fashion, one at a time. Warehouse management system can be implemented. Tomorrow, a SCM dashboard can be implemented. Day after tomorrow, something else can be implemented. And all of those will seamlessly connect with each other, will seamlessly integrate with each other, and will seamlessly talk to your ERP, and so on and so forth. And that, I believe, has led to a OpEx-based service approach. CXOs today do not want to invest everything upfront because every technology needs an adoption time, needs to be implemented well and used well. So you go in the subscription model, go modular, and we have seen very, very successful examples. We spoke about ESG earlier. Unilever has used technology. We are one of those technology providers. Reduced their CO2 emissions in distribution by 9%, and reduce their kilometers traveled in their distribution into, which runs into millions of kilometers. So there are many examples which...
Thanks. I will have to draw close to this interesting conversation, but great learning with this eminent panel, extremely experienced. Few takeaways. One, I'll start from Kanwar that, when you're talking technology in today's world, it has to be for a purpose. It has to be for a purpose that helps you deliver the business benefit to your end client. And, if you talk about logistics and supply chain, the intervention of technology will not only be to make something automate, but, your impact could be around how do you change the finance function around it? How do you change the tax implication around it if you're trying to redo a very different supply chain network? Being conscious about ESG, it's culture, as Abhishek was saying, that it's not about just because you have to do it, but it's the culture change that you need to drive to be responsive to your business. And I like what Swami just said, that the premium you cannot just pass on to the customer to ask for more. You really need to be innovative to see how do you bring the cost of the end product much more palatable for the consumer and still be profitable to your business, which can only happen when you keep disrupting the business models, when you keep rethinking how do you start doing more with less and leverage technology to bring those efficiency to the forefront. With that, thanks all of you. It was a wonderful session to engage with the four very, very experienced friends from the industry and learn from their reflections of what's happening in the world of supply chain and logistics. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I could request all our speakers to please remain on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, if I could please invite Mr. Rajesh Nigam, former Executive Director, Supply Chain, Indian Oil Corporation. So I'd like to request you to please present a token of gratitude to all of our speakers. A very engaging and a very lucid discussion that also left us pondering with some very pertinent questions as well. And on that note, we'd like to thank all our speakers as well for joining in for the CEO panel discussion. We'd also like to thank Mr. Somick Goswami for beautifully spearheading the session for us. Thank you once again, sir. And I think that calls for another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we'll also have all of you come together for a quick group photograph. Let's have you all step forward. And meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, let me also inform you that in a short while, we'll also be having the presence of our guest of honor, Shri Bhupati Raju Srinivasa Verma, Minister of State for Heavy Industries and Steel, Government of India. He's on his way, and in a short while, we'll also be awaiting the guest of honor address. So I'm going to request all of you to continue being seated. Stay tuned. Thank you once again, sir. And on that note, we'll be now setting the stage for our next speaker. So with that, let me go ahead and also introduce our next topic of speech, or for that matter, if I say the address, that's about to come your way. It's all about transforming supply chains. And again, the focus is going around the keywords of innovation, sustainability, and resilience. But this time, joining us this morning, we have someone who comes with more than 20 years of experience, especially around the technology consulting experience. And at the same time, he is also someone who comes with massive international experience in cross-cultural business environments. So we have with us Mr. Madhukar Onial, Head Solution Engineering, Oracle Applications. And if I could please invite him on the stage so that we can get a little more deep dive, a moment for us to deep dive around transforming supply chains through your expertise and through your experience.